So I have this kind of zoomed out, which I know makes it hard to read, but you guys all know what this says because this is the stuff about standardized tests. If you did exercise 4, you know what it says. The point here is to sort of look at the design, look more at the big picture. So this sample is a sample that's better than the original version of the submission because they got it to fit onto one page, which is definitely something you were expected to do for this assignment was get everything to fit onto one page. Um, but it doesn't really look like whoever did this did a whole lot of other things. So um, thinking about this assignment and the success of it, are there any comments you would have about things that this version didn't do? Okay, so Mary says no audience appeal. Um, it didn't really change the wording too much from the original version, I don't think. Any other comments about this version of the flyer, positive or negative, I guess, but yeah, it's not really using document design features. I mean, the only thing it has is all caps for the categories of the tests, which may have even been in the original version. I don't know. They did add some white space between things um, for readability, but yeah, there's nothing else design-wise. Yeah, there's no boldface or italics, nothing typographical that helps things stand out or that cues the reader into understanding the organization of the document, really. White space is really the only thing they have going for it. Yeah, I am not a fan of the all caps all over the place. I mean, if you're gonna do it, I guess the headings are the only reasonable place to do it. But yeah, I would I would not recommend. Um, so yeah, I think you guys have really picked up on most of the problems with this one. And so, this is clearly better than the original, but it's not really enough better, to be honest. So the grade for something like this would be probably some kind of B, right? They didn't make it worse. It is a little bit better, but they really aren't doing enough. All right, so here is a different kind of version of the flyer. Um, so any comments about this? I do agree with the previous one. It was hard to distinguish the sections. I think that sort of everything being very monochromatic and everything having the same typography, it makes it very hard uh, to tell the sections apart. So this one's a little bit different in that respect, at least. So any comments about this flyer, the second one, positive or negative? I agree with Kevin. This is still too wordy. Um, they did edit it a little. I think all of the original flyer used the word test like about 20 million times. This has dialed it back to about 10 million times, so that's good. Um, but I do think it is still too wordy. Yeah, they did use bullet points, and I think that worked well for the tests within the sections to distinguish those. Although they weren't completely consistent because they didn't do that with the test of English for foreign language. So ideally, everything that's at the same level should be kind of treated the same. But I think, mostly they did that. Now, Halima said that this seems too colorful. Um, Personally, I would disagree. I think the use of color is a plus on this. Um, And it does use 2 colors. It could use 1, I suppose. I don't think more than 2 would be good unless they were in the same color family, because then it would just sort of look crazy and chaotic. Personally, I think that a little bit of color does add some visual appeal as long as the colors aren't weird. Um, but, that is a matter of personal opinion to some degree. Um, any other comments about this one? So this one did avoid using all caps everywhere, which I think was good. They use boldface instead, and they use a little bit of italics, but they don't go crazy with the italics. Again, they're not consistent with it. Um, most of the test names are italicized, but one isn't, and it should be consistent. But overall, I think this was a lot better than the last one. So this would probably be something at, the B plus, A minus E sort of zone, perhaps. All right, this one's completely different. So any thoughts about this version?
I take back what I said from earlier about the other one being too colorful.
Yeah, yeah. This one it could definitely be accused of being too colorful. Um, so, it did catch my eye, but I think it goes a little too far. A color scheme might have been better. So I agree with Mari Bertha and Alejandro with their comments. They've taken away the categories of the test, so we have lost that grouping into the three categories, and that's kind of a problem. There are no headings there. Um, Makes me not want to read it. Yeah, I could see that it could be there could be things about this that would be a bit of a turnoff potentially. I could see it's eye-catching though, which could be a plus in a flyer. It's definitely for my personal taste a bit loud, shall we say, color-wise. Um, But I do agree, yeah, the black and on red is not easy to read. And so I think if they'd chosen a color palette that was more subtle, a little bit less in your face, that might have been helpful. Um, Also, I think if they maybe boldface the names of the tests so that they would stand out a bit. Um, any positives that we could say about this? Let's find at least one positive thing to say. Okay, it does talk about each test distinctly. I guess we could say that. That is somewhat of a positive. Um, and they also did edit things back a bit, which was good. Although the typeface is still really small. I think because, there's so many text boxes, they take up space with that. I think this is a strategy that could have worked if it was implemented um, a little bit more finesse, but okay, we got a couple more to quickly look at. So this is another one that is trying to be more visually complex, I guess we could say. Um, so what are some positives and negatives that you would have to comment on this one? Yeah, I kind of like the overall design. I mean, in terms of the shape of the page, I definitely like the mixed grid personally, with, across the top having a horizontal grid and using a vertical grid for the test, and the way they've grouped them has a very balanced appearance that I like. Yeah, it's organized into sections. The sections are clear. The text is small. That is definitely a problem. Even if we assume that it would be bigger in reality than it is on my computer screen, um, it is a bit hard to read in that respect. Um, what about the color scheme? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways? Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Halima. I think colors are okay. I just think that there's not enough contrast with this particular choice. Sort of peach and yellow aren't working too well. So I think, if it had been navy blue and um, I don't know, red or something, it would be easier to read. The contrast is just not quite enough. Um, I feel like this is one that definitely piqued my interest, and I felt like this was headed in the right direction. Again, it just needed a little bit of tweaking. Like I think changing the colors would be good. Um, the clip art or icons, I think, work fairly well. They don't seem too cheesy. Especially the ones with the tests, I think work pretty well. I think maybe the one up at the top is a little cheesy. But mostly I think that that's too small. But I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. All right, the last one. So, any positives or negatives in your response to this? Yeah, there's definitely no details on the tests. Um, whether it's too little information, it does become a judgment call. I think, especially if this were in a context where maybe the students were explicitly directed to a website to get details that could be beneficial. They do describe the purposes of each category of test, and I think that's pretty effectively in that sort of left-hand sidebar. I think that worked pretty well. Um, in some respects, the first professional degree tests somewhat speak for themselves as to whether you would have to take the test, but it's definitely not necessarily clear, to know, you know, which of the other ones you might need to take. Um, I do personally overall like the stripped back approach more than I like the a lot of words approach for this particular thing. Um, I do think they maybe could have kept a little more description, had a smaller picture of someone's laptop, maybe. Any other comments about this one? Well, I'll tell you one other detail that I did like about this one was whoever created this changed the title to something that was more descriptive of what this document really is about. It's about standardized tests for graduate study in the United States, as opposed to the original version of the document, which said the title was Structure of the U.S. Education System Standardized Test. Because this really isn't about the structure of the U.S. education system. So while most people probably didn't change the title, there were a few who did. And for the most part, if you did change the title, that was a good choice. I don't think anyone lost any points for not changing the title, but it is something to think about. When you're creating information for an audience, it's really important that the title helps the audience know what the information is.